Hello, everyone. I'm geetmalasarkar. I'm a watercolor artist from India, and we are going to paint the hollyhock flower today. It is maroon in color. You can use any of the colors, but I'm using this color only. And I'm very happy to be using this color because some of you have expressed that going dark with watercolors is a bit difficult. It is not so, and I will be demonstrating that to you through the process of layering. Therefore, what we will require is to have some amount of patience because layering can be done only when the previous layer is dry. With this flower, which is an A4 size flower, we will all need to be patient and watercolor paper, which is 100% cotton with at least 300 GSM, so that it can help bring out the beauty of the layering process which we are doing. Okay, thank you. So let us begin.
Here we have the reference image of our hollyhock flower which we will be painting, and the basic colors that we need are pink, red, yellow, grey. So we'll be first applying the lightest wash of yellow in the central area. We keep looking at our reference image, and from there we put down the colors where we need to. So this is the lightest, palest yellow which I am putting down in the area where I see yellow on my reference image. There are these vein-like structures which are yellow, so I am pulling down that yellow into that vein-like structure. Since it is very pale, you may not be able to clearly see here, but I am looking at my reference image, and I have now also put down some greens in 4 or 5 sections. Sap green is what I used. I'm using the smallest brush because it is the smallest area which we are tackling here. It is size 1 brush, and in the central area there is this stamen on top of which I am applying slight bit of greenish color. And since the other petals also have this yellow, so I am dragging some yellow and some light pink as well on these areas of thin vein-like structures. So even if it is not very clear, I am using pale pink and yellow also intermittently, depending upon what I can see on my reference image. This is a wet on dry process, so it will not be very difficult, provided we are looking at the reference image constantly and putting it in the place where we require to. So we need to observe carefully so that we can paint it carefully. Now I have, as you see, I've put down some pale pink also in between those yellows. Here I am wetting down this petal, the top petal, and putting in my maroon color. If you do not have maroon, you can mix little bit of uh, red and blue. These flowers come in various colors also, so you can use your own color as well, whichever you feel like using. Just that the values we'll have to maintain as we see on the reference image. So since this section is still wet, I'm dropping in and painting a bit also, not just dropping, in some grays. This gray I've created by mixing my primary colors, which is red, yellow and blue. It may not be pure gray, it can be leaning towards red as well or towards blue as well if you are mixing the primaries. In parts, I am also adding some reds because I see that there are different colors in here. So what I've done is that I am putting in colors as I see on the reference image. Right now I am doing little bit of veining, drawing in the veins with my brush. Since there are too many veins and we need to go darker, so we will have to keep coming back to doing these veins again and again once the layer is dry. So even though it is dry now, the previous layers of yellow and light pink, I have to come back to it so that I can darken it properly. The whole flower will go through the same process. Once a layer is dry, then we will put down another layer by either re-wetting that area and using the colors and the values which are required. Values mean how dark we can go or how light we can go as per the reference image. Now we are doing the other next section of the same petal. And first what I'm doing is that I'm working on the shadow areas. As I had said, I'd prepared my gray color using primaries red, yellow and blue. So I'm putting in the veins because these I see in the shadow areas. This is wet on dry. It should be drying up quickly. And even if your color has dried out, like on my palette, the mix which I had prepared, you can use little bit of water. If you are using artist grade paint, you can leave the color like that. You will be requiring it again and again, so you can put in a little bit of water and the color will be fresh to use, provided it has remained clean in the sense that the color which you have originally prepared, do not mix it with other colors. Let the gray be on its own. So here I'll be going slow a bit because I'm looking at the reference image and putting down where the veins are and where the shadows are. Some of the veins are halfway only. Even if you do something a little bit different over here, it's not a very big issue because obviously different petals, different they can have different veining as well. The basic thing, the how it is moving should be in the right direction in the direction of the form of a particular petal that you are painting, but otherwise it's not mandatory that if there are 5 veins you need to have 5 veins. You can have 6 or 4 as well. As long as we are able to bring out the basic structure which we can see on a reference image, you may have little less or little more of these shadow areas in gray. Since I can see these, I'm just painting them with my gray, light gray, because this will go dark again. If it is looking too thick, you can thin it down by tapping that area with your fingers. We need to keep observing the reference image very carefully because it is a relatively complex flower. It has a lot of wet on wet and wet on dry in certain sections, as you see here. Okay, I have got my new color, Holbein Permanent Alizarin Crimson, which I am mixing for this flower now. I'm also mixing the 3 primaries, red, yellow and blue. Any of the 3 will do. This is right now a little more on the greenish side because yeah, and I'm preparing relatively thick mixes because if I do wet on wet, it will help me. So you see how it is green and the red maroon, and when I do it on top, how dark that green will go. Now wetting down the petal, the next petal. Previous one has pretty much dried. Be careful near the corners and edges of the petal. Do not put in a lot of water, and then with the mix which you have prepared, you can paint that area. I have put more paint near the shadow area as I see in the reference image, and I have put less paint in the area. In fact, I am taking out paint from area where I see a value difference in the reference image. Sometimes we can also use our imagination to paint a certain thing, provided that we know of a particular flower and we have seen it so many times and we have studied the reference image of the flower which we are painting. We can add in our own imagination also. Be careful. I'm like when you're nearing the edges, using a small size 1 brush, and the consistency of the paint is quite thin, as you can see. I don't want it to form a hard edge, so I'm putting down some more water on the rest of the petal as well. I could have left it like that, but I thought let it not form the central hard edge, so I'm blending it with a lot of water on the entire leaf, entire petal. Now the previous area is still wet, so I'm putting down some of my gray mix. If you look at your reference image, you will be able to do this. Right now the paper is not very wet, it is slightly damp, you can say. Use a small brush, putting in the shadows. I think I took little more of concentrated color. Anyway, it because the area is wet, so it is looking quite dark. Once it dries out, we will understand that it will fade a bit, because watercolor dries a little lighter than what it looks like when it is being painted. I'm only putting in the shapes as I can see on the reference image. The petal where I'm working is still wet while the upper section has started drying. You can see that area, whitish, light pink area, it has started drying. So I will not be going on that area. At this stage we cannot see our pencil line, but since we had mapped out while we started doing this petal, we can understand where will the shadows and the darker colors would be. Now we are painting the next petal, which is opposite to the one which we last painted. The lower petal has dried, and the color which I am putting in is a very light version of the alizarin crimson mixed with slight bit of grey. I don't want to go wrong, so I'm looking at my reference image, which is very crucial, and I have put in slight bit of darks in the corners and here in towards the foreground. It is still wet. You can see that the lines, the veins which I am putting in with grey color, they are diffusing. That shows that the paper is still wet. And I'm trying to bring in slight bit of wobbly movement. I'm not creating a very straight and perfect line because that wobbly movement would be required. Here I am seeing on the reference image that this petal is very dark in the shadows, so I am painting quite dark. I have put a layer of water also on this petal, because of which it will dry out slowly and allow me more space to paint. Using different colors as I see on the reference. Right now I'm using permanent elixir crimson again, and because this is a very dark petal, eventually will go very dark, so I'm working on it till it is wet. These areas are very dark if you can closely observe your reference image. My reference is not very proper in the sense that it is not a glazed image, so what I've also done is that I've opened the same image on my phone, which is placed right in front of me, and because I'm looking at my phone as well when I'm painting, I'm able to decipher what colors and how dark those colors should be when I'm painting. Basically right now I'm looking at the shapes and creating the same. Now in this area there are not very many lines which I have drawn, because we can come down directly with the colors that we see. Also because this area is very um, it's you need to work with wet on wet in this area, which will be helpful because the edges and the lines are not very defined. Be careful while going towards the edge of your petals. I'm trying to straighten the side of this petal. I'm still using size 1 brush because you need to go into the nooks and crannies. This area is drying out, I think, but okay, now what I'll do is that I'll be doing an underpainting with slightly yellowish color, because on the reference image I see that there is a section which looks relatively lighter, that is, it is not very maroon, so I am putting in a background color. It is called underpainting, and once it dries out then I will be painting it with alizarin crimson. Just this next layer on this same petal. Since it is a biggish flower, not all the sections will dry equally, and I also turn the pages so that I can do it better and move my hands accordingly. When I turn the page, I have to turn my reference image also, rewetting the first petal. And here we can come down with our gray mix. If you have paints gray, that is also fine. Putting in my grays and my maroons. What you see on the reference image is what you have to bring about on the paper, on your watercolor paper. So as good as we can observe, we will put it down similarly. Now the next section, here we had done this underpainting, which I re-wetted, and I'm just putting a thinner glaze of the maroon color. I've turned this again and I am repainting the darker shadows of the second petal which we had done. I'm turning so that I've turned the page so that I can move freely on the areas where I need to work. Because I had wet this petal all over, so I came down with another layer of maroon as well on that lighter section, and where I see that there is a darker value being used, I'll be putting down a darker value. And this is the fourth petal that we were working on. Here again I am putting a thinner glaze of my alizarin crimson on a wet background. Slightly wet in the sense it is right now a bit damp also. A damp background, you can say. So we are moving according to areas where we can paint, and we are allowing other areas to dry up, and this is the process we will need to keep following while at the same time looking at a reference image. So I'll be ending the first part of the video now. If you need any help, please do message me.